All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to tackle a huge question, maybe one of the most fundamental questions in any society. How exactly do you control the people in power?
I mean, really think about it for a second. The government has so much power, right? The power to tax you, to make regulations, to enforce laws, even the power to use force. So how do we make sure that all that power is used for our benefit and not against us?
It's this classic double-edged sword, you know? We absolutely need a strong government to do things like provide public services, keep order, and protect the country. But that very same strength, well, it can become a real threat to our freedom if it isn't kept in check. It's a core tension. This quote just nails it. We build these massive, powerful engines of the state, but we've also got to build a braking system, a set of rules to keep those engines from going off the rails. And that braking system, well, it has a name. And that brings us to administrative law. Now, don't think of this as some boring organizational chart. Think of it more like the user manual for government power itself, the actual principles that say how that power can, and more importantly, can't be used on a daily basis. So here's the bottom line. Administrative law is literally the rule book for the rulers. It's the law that applies to the government itself, making sure every single official, from someone at your local council all the way up to a cabinet minister, is acting within the law. And this right here, this quote, it just brilliantly sums up the whole philosophy. The idea is that no one is above the law. The notion that some government agency or minister has total unlimited power to do whatever they feel like, nope, that's completely rejected. They have discretion, for sure, but it's never, ever unfettered. So why does all this matter so much? It's simple, really. The whole point is to protect you, the citizen. Administrative law is designed to be the citizen's #1 defense against the abuse of government power. So how do we actually enforce this rulebook? So if there's a rulebook, who's the referee? Well, that's where judicial review comes in. Think of the courts as the impartial referee in the game of government. Their job isn't to play the game or score points, but to make sure everyone is playing by the rules. Okay, now look closely at this definition, because one word here is absolutely crucial: legality. Judicial review isn't about whether a government decision was a good one or a wise one. It's all about whether the decision was lawful. Was it made according to the rules in that rulebook? This is a really, really important distinction to get right. An appeal is basically asking a higher body to look at the facts and decide if the right decision was made, on the merits. Judicial review, though, is totally different. It's all about the process. Did the government body follow the proper legal procedure? Did they act fairly? Did they stay within the powers they were actually given by law? So to really drive this home, the court isn't going to jump in and become the new decision maker. It's not going to say, you should have built the hospital on this side of town, not that one. Instead, it will say something like, the way you decided where to build the hospital wasn't fair, so you have to make that decision again, and this time, do it by the book. All right, so if the court is the referee, what counts as a foul play? What kind of mistakes are big enough that the ref can blow the whistle and stop the game? What are the actual grounds for challenging a government decision? We can basically break them down into two main categories. First, you've got procedural unfairness. That's like breaking the rules of how the game is supposed to be played. And second, there's abuse of discretion, which is more like trying to play the game on a whole different field, completely outside the legal boundaries. So, procedural unfairness, that's all about the basic duty to act fairly. We often call this natural justice, and it really boils down to two big ideas. First, the right to a fair hearing, which means if you're affected, you get to know the case against you and have a chance to tell your side of the story. And second, the rule against bias, making sure the person making the decision is neutral and impartial. Man, this quote from Lord Denning just hits the nail on the head. It's not enough to be fair. You have to be seen to be fair. Because if people lose faith in the system, if they walk away thinking the fix was in, then confidence in the entire system of justice just collapses. Now, that second type of foul play, abuse of discretion, this is when a public body actually has the legal power to do something, but they use it in a way that Parliament or the law just never intended, like using their power for a corrupt reason, or basing a decision on something totally irrelevant, like a personal dislike, or completely ignoring crucial information they were supposed to consider.
And this brings us to the classic test for what we call unreasonableness. Now listen, the bar here is incredibly high. It's not enough for a decision to be just kind of bad or a little bit off. It has to be, well, so off the charts irrational that no sensible public authority acting properly would have ever come to it.
So what's the penalty when the ref blows the whistle? It's a big one. The unlawful decision is declared a nullity. It becomes legally void. It isn't just canceled or reversed. It's treated as if it never existed in the first place. The public body has to go right back to the drawing board and start over. Okay, so all this legal theory sounds pretty good, right? But what does it look like in the real world? Let's bring this home from theory into practice and see how these principles actually get the job done. Yeah, these are not just abstract ideas floating around in a textbook. Let's take Nepal, for instance. The Constitution itself gives the courts this very power to hold the government to account. In fact, there was a landmark case where the court basically stepped in to enforce environmental laws because the government just wasn't doing it. That shows you how this system can be used to protect public goods. It's the rule of law in action. So the really critical thing to understand here is that this whole system gives power directly to citizens. It gives you a real legal tool to stand up and say, hey, you broke the rules. It fundamentally changes the relationship from one where you're just a subject to one where you're a citizen and the government is accountable to you.
Look, if there's one single thing you remember from this explainer, make it this. Administrative law and the power of judicial review is the most essential safeguard we have. It ensures government power is used for the public good and that our individual rights are respected. It's the operational manual for the rule of law.
But that does leave us with a pretty interesting question to chew on, doesn't it? We've set up the courts to be the referees that keep the government in check. But who keeps the courts in check? Who referees the referee? And that, well, that's a deep constitutional question for another time. Thanks for watching The Explainer.